You're listening to Season 2, Episode 9 of the Attempt Adventure Podcast, a podcast all about travel, finding adventure every day, and seeking out adventurous ways to make life more interesting. From Bangkok, Thailand, I am your host, Michael DeRosiers, joined as always by my co-host,
James Barrett from Boulder, Colorado.
Well, James, in this episode, we are joined by photographer Robert Lowdon from robertlowdon.com. Robert has traveled all across North America, photographing beautiful landscapes in U.S. and Canada national parks. In this episode, we talk about his photographic journey, getting outdoors and exploring the wilderness, and the national park system. But first, James, did you do anything new or adventurous this week? Now, hang on. Listeners, we both received a penalty in the last episode. However, that was literally yesterday that we recorded this, so it has not been a week. It has not been 2 weeks. This is Hollywood magic here. We don't have to submit our penalties just yet.
So, nothing really super exciting, considering I live in one of the most beautiful places in North America. My wife and I, we've been trying to explore our neighborhood more. We don't, most of the time, we just sort of get in the car and leave when we want to go do something. We don't really go around us. So we decided we were going to take a walk. And turns out there is a mountain bike park. There is a skate park. There is some great parks with great little hiking trails and a river, like literally 5 minutes from my house. And I had no idea it was there.
I think that's important, right?
Yes.
We don't have to go far to find that, to find adventure.
Mm-mm.
And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you said that because that's actually something that Robert and I touch on in the episode. Like we do talk about that. And we've talked about it as well in previous episodes, how we have these blinders that prevent us from seeing the adventure in our own backyards.
Yeah. We walked and we were watching these guys do like the, I don't know exactly what it's called. And I don't want to misspeak because it's not like BMX bike, but they're on regular bikes. It's not dirt bikes or anything, but they're doing the jumps and tricks. And
oh, that's so cool.
It's super cool. And it's all on dirt and stuff like that. So it's mountain biking, sort of. I don't know exactly what it's called. If any of you do that, please let me know because I want to know what it is because it looks amazing.
That sounds really fun. That's cool. I guess you didn't try it though, did you?
No, I did not. The last time I was on a bike was probably in Thailand.
Was it really at Ayutthaya?
Yeah, I don't own a bike. Boulder is very bike friendly. However, where we are from is not. So the Dallas-Fort Worth area is notoriously non-bike friendly. I think it's the least bike friendly city in the U.S. or something like that.
Gotta sell those cars.
Yep. Anyway, we digress. I don't own a bike. I would like a bike, but I just don't have one right now.
That's fair. I mean, I got that really good bike last year, third hand from our friend and fellow podcaster Greg Jorgensen, and I have taken it out several times. I still haven't done my ride to Ayutthaya like I've been planning to do. It's logistically tricky. I don't want to do it by myself, so I'm just trying to find someone that wants to go.
And it's a ways. That's a ride. How far is it?
It is 81 kilometers. So
about 40 miles.
Like 40-ish, yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Both ways, you're looking at an 80-mile ride. That's.
I probably wouldn't do it in a day. I'd probably go there and then probably stay overnight and maybe, because if you're going to go to Ayutthaya, you're probably going to want to see the ruins and stuff anyway. Like, you don't want to just go there and then turn around. So I'd probably go there and then book a hostel and then come back the next day, or even just like go there and take the train back, maybe.
That's not a bad idea either.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like 40 miles on a bike, that's not too bad.
No.
It's mostly flat going that way, so it's not too bad.
But anyway, that's very cool, James. Awesome. Me, I did something new. It wasn't really an adventure. I'll share you a few photographs, and I'll also put these on the website. I went to a new market the other day, a market I had never been to. It was called Jot Fairs, and had all sorts of food trucks and beer. You could get some beer, walk around, just food of all sorts. It was right in the middle of the city, right near Praram 9, which is the mall that you and I went to when we were trying to cash my paycheck that time when it was the holiday and all the banks were closed.
Good times.
Yeah. I tried this new type of food. I forget what it's called. It's a Chinese Thai dish. It's like a sour soup. So it uses like the part of the pork that you normally don't eat, like the spine of the pork. So it's like spine soup, I think is what it translates to. And they give you like a plastic glove, and you just have to like pick the meat off of it with the plastic glove. I think that this market has only been open, I don't think it's been open very long, maybe just within the last year or so.
It looks really cool. It's very Western.
Hipster.
Yeah, it's very hipster. It looks like something we'd have here in Boulder.
Yeah, you got a big old Cadillac DeVille right in the middle. Beautiful car.
That is a nice Cadillac. Could you imagine owning that? That'd be amazing.
I was looking at that thing, James, and I was like, how on earth did they park? I mean, you remember my first car. My first car was huge. And it was 1987 Oldsmobile. It was half the size of this Cadillac. I don't know how they, like, what if you have to parallel park? How on earth did you ever drive that?
There were a whole lot less people on the road, I think, back then. And so you didn't have, because you couldn't turn sharply either. You need like 100 feet to turn. But I mean, this place looks really cool.
I don't know about you, but I've just been home so much the last couple years. It was just so nice to actually get out and just be around other people kind of for the first time. And everyone was just having a good time, listening to music, walking around, getting good food.
Yeah, I was about to say, my favorite part about these pictures is not like the stalls or the food or anything like that. It's just seeing people enjoying themselves.
I know, I've missed that so much.
And just being out. From what I can see in the pictures, it seems to be a good mix. There's a few tourists, but it's mostly locals.
Yeah, it is. And it's in a fairly upscale kind of neighborhood. It's not like
you can kind of tell. It's
not really a very like traditional Thai market or anything like that. It's definitely more of like like you said, it's more westernized, more of like a food market.
The grain silo is very familiar.
I don't know if you've been down to Waco in the last couple of years, but it looks like Magnolia.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Say what you will about Chip and Joanna Gaines, but they have definitely helped the reputation of Waco. It's really nice not to be associated with David Koresh as much. It's nicer to be associated with like hipster furniture.
That is true. If you had to pick one. For those of you that don't know, just look up David Koresh in the Branch Davidians and you can read about it.
Well, all right, guys. Well, before we get into the episode, just wanted to ask if you would do us a favor. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to ask you guys to please maybe share it. If you know someone that's maybe into photography or wants to get more into outdoor photography, let them know about this episode, because here we're talking to a real landscape photographer. Also, if you don't mind, give us a review. Leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. That actually makes a huge difference. Next up, our reminder of our monthly challenge. Really, I guess we could call it a bi-monthly challenge, because this year we're trying to do challenges over the course of 2 months to give people a little bit more time to participate. Mm-hmm. And this challenge is courtesy of Linda King, the Smart Travelista, and that is to write 100 or 1,000 words. We have 2 categories, like a travel writer, telling us about either your hometown or the place where you live. And that will be due at the end of June. So get those in, submit those to us, and we'll be reading some of our favorites on the air, and we'll be doing it too. And lastly, if you do enjoy the show, if you like what we do, if you have enjoyed hearing the guests that we have on, would like to ask you guys to just check out our Ko-fi page. We started a Ko-fi page to help support the show. Obviously, we love making the Attempt Adventure podcast, but things like podcast hosting, domain registration, the website, it's not free. It's not cheap to do. So if you do want to help offset some of the costs of the show, I'd like to invite you guys to head on over to ko-fi.com/attemptadventure. There are 2 different ways you can help us out. You can buy us a beer, in which case we will actually have a beer on the air, shout you out, and give you a thank you. Or you can become a member by subscribing to one of our monthly tiers. Members get all sorts of benefits. They will get to help come up with questions for upcoming guests and make the show a bit more interactive. And if you even sign up at certain tiers, you'll receive real physical handwritten postcards from me and James a couple times a year, just to say thank you for helping keep the show on the air. All right, guys, now on to the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Lowdon. All right, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, listeners of the Attempt Adventure podcast. I am very, very excited to be joined today by Robert Lowdon, a photographer who is here to tell us about some incredible adventures around North America. So, Robert, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So glad that you're here. So, well, the first question that we always like to ask our guests is just to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you live, And what is your relationship with adventure?
For sure. As you said, my name is Robert. I am a Canadian photographer based in Toronto, Canada. And I basically travel all over Canada and the world, just kind of photographing great things. So for me, I guess my job in a way is travel and adventure.
Hmm.
We do a lot of fine art photography, landscape photography, a lot of the major national parks over here, US and Canada as well. And then I also I work for a lot of different companies too, where I kind of travel around and shoot different things for them too. So I mean, for me, like I'd like to really think that like it's my life really, because I've managed to kind of carve out this
Right.
career over the years and just kind of make my hobby my job. And it's kind of
Wow, yeah.
this weird relationship where it's all the thing, right? Like people are like separate work from your life, but it's like it's kind of I tried to make it a more of a holistic life, I guess you'd say.
Right. Well, that's the dream, isn't it? Right. If you can find what you love and then actually find success doing that, that's incredible. Well, I know that you do a lot of adventure photography, outdoor photography, but what are some of your favorite types of photograph to take? Because I know that you do a lot of different. I guess you would call. I don't know if you would call them genres, but a lot of different
Mhm.
types of photography as well. What are your favorite types of photographs?
I try to do a different thing so I never get bored with it, to be honest. It kind of
Right. Right.
do the things that pique my interest. And that's been pretty great there. But to go back to your question though, I think like for me it's definitely the landscape photography or nature photography, or
Right.
I guess you could call it adventure photography too as well.
Right.
Photography is kind of funny because it's kind of like music. It's been split into all these tiny little genres, but it's
Hmm.
kind of all still just rock and roll. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
kind of
Right.
funny there.
Yeah.
It's all the same stuff. But I was just gonna go back to yeah, like the landscape stuff. I mean, with photography, it really helps you to see these things that I think a lot of people just don't maybe take the time or get the privilege to see, because
Right.
not only are you going to these amazing places in the world, you're going to these amazing places in the world when nobody is there.
Mm.
You're seeing things at 4 o'clock in the morning because you have to, like, we chase light, right? We chase weather conditions.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
always trying to get the best photo, right? So you have to be really disciplined to get out there every morning or stay out all night or whatever you need to do.
Right.
And by doing that, it creates a whole different world that you get to see. And it's really a way to like experience the world on your own terms. And I guess it's more of a personal experience. And it's hard to describe in that sense, but it almost humbles you. It brings you back to like the world. I like to joke
Right.
too that usually at these places, like I'm walking out when everyone's walking in, and I'm like, "Where have you been? Like you've missed everything. Like it's 10 a.m. Come on, get out here."
Right, sure. I guess that photography kind of gives you the chance to look at something through a completely different lens, if you will. Right, but look at things through a very different perspective than you would if you were just looking at them with your own eyes, because you kind of, as you said, you're chasing the light. You're trying to find it with that, maybe that image or that scene that you're searching for, and it kind of forces you to get out there and explore it in a different way, which I think is super cool. And it does take a lot of dedication to try to take that perfect photograph.
It's almost a madness too. The funny part about it is
Right.
because you're always chasing the next thing. Yeah,
Right.
it's hilarious because it's like you take something great and then 5 minutes later it's like, what have you done now? What have you done lately? So
Right. Well, what is your background with photography? So, how did you get into it? What inspired you to become a photographer, especially a landscape photographer? What was that spark that got you into this field?
so I basically started taking photos like I think my generation, our generation, I'm like late 30s, so I've been taking photos my whole life in one way or another, right? Like parents got the disposable cameras. We didn't have cell phones quite yet until we got older, but there still
Right.
was cameras everywhere, right? Cheaply available for the most part. So in some ways, I guess I've been taking photos my whole life. I didn't start really, I would say, getting serious about it to maybe like my late teens.
Mm,
And then from there, and then probably around 19 or so, I think I got like one of those first digital cameras, like the first compact ones.
right. Okay.
And then I really just started shooting serious with it. And the funny part is like after about like a month or 2 months, I'd had enough of it because it didn't have the controls I want and I couldn't customize it. And I just kind of grabbed my parents' old Canon camera that they had, and you didn't think much of them back then, but like those old film cameras, you can do anything with them. They're just fantastic. Like you can just do anything with them as long as you're cool with shooting film. But anyway, in that, I did that seriously as a hobby for a while. And then I just kind of, I don't know, I just kind of like started working just regular jobs. I ended up working in kind of a factory for a while. And then I just kind of never thought that I could do it. Like I never thought that that was the career that you did, right? Like
Right,
I'm
right.
from like middle of Canada, prairies, working town. Like literally the village that I'm from has 5 houses in it. So like
Oh, wow.
it's pretty small, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like to joke now in Toronto, I see more people in a day than I saw in the first 20 years of my life now. So it's
Oh my
kind of
gosh, yeah.
funny. Uh,
Wow.
but sorry, yeah, getting off track there. But to go back to that, yeah, so I just kind of got to the point where I was just unhappy, and then
Right.
I went back to school for a year, and I thought I might try maybe some like science related or medicine, and I quickly
Mhm.
realized that I couldn't memorize the anatomy, and I was like, oh geez, if I can't
Right.
memorize what body parts are, this isn't going to work for anyone. Um, but anyway, from there, I just kind of said to hell with it, and then I just went to school for photography. For the program was like a 1 year program. It's like a college degree up here,
Okay.
um, which is a little bit different than the U.S. system. But
Right, right.
it's more like a community college, right?
Okay, sure.
And then I came out of school, and then I realized there was no jobs for photographers, and then I started a company 2 months later, and then I just figured it out. Yeah, so that's
That's
kind
awesome.
of my thing. I started really small, and it builds.
Well, you mentioned that you kind of got your start with a film camera. Do you still shoot on film, or do you mostly shoot digitally now?
Pretty much exclusively digital now.
Yeah. Yeah. I still like to play around with film from time to time. It's fun. It has a different kind of feel for it, but of course it does get expensive, doesn't it? It's just the fact of having to buy and
Yeah.
then develop it rather than just being able to delete a picture if it's no good, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's I don't know. I keep thinking I'd like to get into large format work
Oh, yeah,
again.
right.
Like the big 8 by 10 sheets of film, right? You're like, there's like $70 with each click type of shot.
Right. But man, you can get so much detail in those pictures though.
You can. It's very intentional photography, which is really neat too, because like that's the gold standard you want, right? You don't want to take 100 photos. You want to take five.
One really good one,
The
right.
one is
Yeah.
yeah. So they kind of force you, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's kind of the thing about film is that you can't just shoot everything you see. You have to be, like you said, very intentional about what you take a picture of, and especially with medium format or large format, really. Well, cool. Well, you mentioned that you had photographed 48 national parks throughout North America. So, what are some of your favorite places, either to photograph or just to see in the US and then also in Canada? Some of your favorite national parks?
So U.S. Oh geez, like Utah,
Mm,
Northern Arizona, that whole area is just amazing.
it's so like otherworldly, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like Arches and Zion, like these
it
places,
is.
they look like they're from an alien planet.
No, and they're just like they're so rich too. Like it's just like it's hard to believe like when you first see it. The first time you see one of those parks with like the red stone and the
Mhm.
dirt and like it just blows your mind. You're like, I didn't know this existed.
Right.
To go back to probably the favorite ones down there. If we're talking national parks, I'd probably say that Bryce Canyons might be my favorite one. That's like the otherworldly one. Like Arches is too, of course, but like Bryce with all the rock formations and everything. Like I think like this one isn't in that area. It's a little bit south, but like White Sands is now national park. When I was there, it wasn't.
Right. That's quite recent, I think, within the last 2 or 3 years that they got upgraded from national monument to national park.
Yeah, it's kind of I guess they have like you have to work your way up or something to get
Right.
to the national park because there's so many monuments too, right?
Yeah.
That are just equally as amazing. But for that one, like White Stance was just it's the same thing. It's otherworldly. It's like
Yeah.
pure white sand in New Mexico. It comes out of nowhere, and then it's just like it just blows your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. Now, what about in Canada? Because I'm fairly familiar with US national parks, but I've actually never been to Canada. So, what are some of your favorite either national parks or just places to photograph in Canada?
Yeah, you should come sometime. It's pretty great up here.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I would say Banff is. You probably heard of Banff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like the iconic Canada National Park, right? Rocky Mountains, and then there's also Jasper, which is connected to the north of it. So those two are probably, I would say, like the major parks here. It's Rocky Mountain, so it's comparable to like Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, but it's really there's something different about the Canadian Rockies. Like they're sharper, they're newer, it's more rugged. Like I know it sounds weird to say they're sharper, but the mountains look sharper from a distance.
Right, right.
They look
Okay.
more
Okay.
like knives punching up into the sky, and then like that greenish water you see in Washington State as well. So it's pretty similar up to there, and then to the East Coast too. Is there's some good ones out there too, like Newfoundland. Yeah, that would be like similar to probably Maine in the U.S.
Okay. It's probably quite similar in Canada. I always say that, the US, may have some issues, it may have its problems, but the National Park Service is not one of them. I think if there's one thing the US does right, it's its national parks because there is some incredible nature, I think, in North America. And sometimes it is overlooked by tourists
Yeah,
who come from other places. People come and they go to New York City or Los Angeles, but they don't make their way to, White Sands, for example.
like I would even say too, like the U.S. national parks, like I think they're the best in the world, and
Really, yeah.
Canada I think could learn a few things from the U.S. National Park Service. It's immaculate. The operation that they run there is just second to none I've seen. So props to them, and also too the cost to go to the U.S. national parks is so affordable. It's just
Yeah,
crazy
that's
to
true.
me how cheap it is for, like I think like what is it for a yearly pass? I think it's like $140 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah, and that gets you and, like, whoever's in your car also in for free.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah, like I think everyone in the world should go there. Anytime they visit,
Yeah.
that's where you need to go. Especially if you're going to Las Vegas. Like, get out of Las Vegas for a day, just please. Nothing against Las Vegas.
But there's so many more interesting things in that part of the world, right? Well, what are some of your favorite photographs that you've taken, and what are the stories behind them?
I'm gonna jump back to White Sands on that one, on the first one. When I went to White Sands, it was like it was kind of a sandstorm going on. And I got there like late, close to sunset. And it was just like amazing. So I must have just looked like a complete fool because I'm just I had to wrap the camera because it's blowing sand, right? And the last thing you want
Right,
in a
that's
camera is sand. Like
not
it's
good for your
just
lens, yeah.
no, no, it's not good for anything. Yeah. So I got this. I got the camera. I got like a T-shirt because I'm traveling in a car, or a rental car. And like this is normally what I do when I go to these places. Like I'll fly in and I'll rent a car, and then I'll basically go around and I'll either camp or just find a hotel. But I prefer to camp. But anyway, so yeah, so I just grabbed like a dirty T-shirt out of the car, right, and then I got her like wrapped around the camera, right, and I'm running through these sand dunes in this sandstorm and giggling like a little child, and it was just like absolutely amazing. The sun's coming down, right, and it's just I don't know, it's just like there's a few moments like when you do this that like just they just almost break your heart. I think like it just you see something that's just so beautiful. Like it changes you. It changes who you are as a person. And then everything you see from there is just that little bit different. And that I think is definitely one of those moments. I try to call the one photo. It's got a really long title. It says one day you're gonna look at the world and it's gonna change the person that who you are. I think I botched that a little bit, but I think that's something that it's like any moment you get to do something that takes you outside of yourself, I think is huge. And I think that is what travel is, and I think that is what adventure is, because we get so stuck in our heads all the time and with our own little things, and there's a whole big world out there. Like, you gotta put yourself out there. I guess probably the next one. See, I could probably just do this for hours and tell you all of the stories of all of them. So
Hey, that's what
you
we want
can
to
feel
hear.
free to move me on. But cool, I'm in the right place then. Anyway, so I guess probably the next one I would say is probably Monument Valley, Utah.
I've never been there.
Oh, you have to go there. So that's like Monument Valley is, I'm sure you know, or if you don't, I'll just inform everyone. Like, Monument Valley is the most, like, it's the iconic American West photo.
Mm.
It's in every Western movie you've seen. It's anytime you see someone riding a horse and there's like a mountain range in the background, it's probably Monument Valley, at least from the 70s or 60s or anything.
Isn't that where Forrest Gump stops running and decides to go home? Where he's in the middle of the desert on that very long road?
I think it actually is. I think it is Monument Valley. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is,
Okay, right.
actually. Yeah. Yeah, and that one I was racing there from, where was I coming from that day? I was coming from, because it's near Page, Arizona, which has a lot of different things in it, and it's also Horseshoe Bend's right near there, and then also Antelope Canyon's right near there as well. And the road is kind of coming into Page, so it's like that whole area, right? Like 200-mile radius there's so many things in it. But anyway, I was headed. I think I was headed north, and I was coming through, and I was racing to get there. And one of the things too is because you're always racing the sunset, right? You're always trying to get into the best position, so it's kind of a little bit of a race sometimes, and you're looking for spots to stop, and you're like, oh, there's someone there, that's not a good spot, or there's someone there, that's not a good spot.
Right.
And then I was like, no, 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 no. And then finally I just found this one place, and I was like, I don't know if this is good. And then I just pulled over, whatever. Which is funny because, like, so much of the shots, there's so much planning that goes into them. And then every now and then you just get something, and it feels like you just get real lucky. And so it's wintertime. I'm racing, trying to get there. And I'm from Canada too, so like wintertime in the desert down there is like, I'm like, this is spring, this isn't a big deal.
Yeah, there's a different perspective on that, I think.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm going off track. But yeah, to go back to it, I just basically pulled the car over and then set up real quick, and then probably like one of the best sunsets I've ever seen in my life. To see an entire sky just turn red and pink blows your mind. It lasted probably 2 minutes, and then to darkness, and that was it. But it only takes 2 minutes.
Wow, that is so cool. Like you said, as much planning as you put into it, sometimes there's just that element of being in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm. It's like 90% of it is showing up, right?
Right.
It's got to show up.
Well, what are some of your maybe some funniest moments that you've had in your work in the wilderness, and then also maybe if you've had any scary moments?
It's always kind of funny. I'm kind of a ridiculous person, so I seem to walk across these funny things sometimes. I've seen some scary things with people in parks not behaving. I've seen some people do some crazy things that I don't think they should do. But that's probably not very funny to talk about those things. I think like probably the White Sands was the funny one again, right? Where I was just kind of running around there.
Sure. I guess anytime you're trying to lug your gear around, keep it safe, and you've got like $1,000+ worth of equipment that you're trying to protect, it's going to look a little bit ridiculous, right?
Oh yeah, it's a ridiculous thing, right? Like, you're gonna carry this computer box across these miles to get somewhere to push a button to show other people the evidence that you did this, right?
Right.
People are gonna pay you. Like, I'm well aware of how ridiculous my career is, but I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about gear then. What kind of gear do you use?
I generally shoot Nikon cameras exclusively. I'm not sponsored or anything by Nikon. Yeah, so I mean, for me, you kind of start a system, and then you buy into the system, and you kind of stick with the system. So, and like, Nikon cameras are fantastic too. So I shoot pretty much exclusively. I'll shoot like a Nikon D850 right now, high megapixel count. It's just a really great camera. And then I have a few other Nikon cameras that I shoot as well too. I've just kind of stuck with them. Been my favorite for there. I'll also touch like a Sony camera every now and then too, but I usually use Sony more for just for video. I find the video with Sony is just great. And then sometimes too I might touch something a little bit more higher end for video, like a red or something like that. But mostly it would be Sony for video. But I feel like I'm giving you a really long answer on camera. So Nikon D850. I'd go second most important thing is a good tripod. I use a Slick, it's called, aluminum tripod. It is not that expensive. It's probably like a $300 tripod. And it might sound expensive, but when you're looking at tripods, like you can hit $1,000, $2,000.
Well, compared to
for
camera
like,
gear, that's not that bad. That's not that
yeah,
bad.
yeah, for sure. And it's not the highest end of tripods, but the thing is tough and it's metal and a lot of people swear by carbon fiber, and I could be wrong, but like I can hit things with that tripod. I can use it as like a cane to get across rivers. I can do whatever I need to do with that thing, and I'm not worried if I break it. And so far, it's held up for 7 years. I don't even know how. I've even had the leg fall off it. I just put it back on, and it's good to go again. So it just works great. And then Manfrotto, I use a geared Manfrotto tripod head, which is really important, I think, to have instead of like a ball head now. Just because my work's gotten so precise now, especially with like if I'm shooting any architecture or things like that, like it has to be so precise when you're shooting wide angles to really get things not distorted. And I think that's really crucial, is to get things exactly the way you want them. And just like 1 degree out can really change things in a bad way. Besides lenses, the next most important thing I think is a good set of filters. I use Lee Grad filters.
When it comes to lenses, what kind of lenses do you like using when you're outdoors, when you're shooting landscape photography?
So lately I use the Nikon 19 tilt shift lens. It's the Nikon 19 millimeter PCE, and that's one heck of a lens, because you can change perspective on it. You can frame everything you want. It's like using an old large format camera in a DSLR container.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that because I can get more sky. I can control ground, and then I can shift focus if I want. That's a pricey lens too, but you don't have to just stick with that type of lenses. Like I've taken a lot of shots with just like a 50 millimeter 1.8 Nikon lens, which is I think is like $60.
Cool. Well, you mentioned that you like to go camping when you're out there. So I guess outside of film gear, what are some of your favorite pieces of camping gear, or just some pieces of equipment that you wouldn't want to be outdoors in the national park without?
I generally car camp. I'll say that. I'm not backpacking as much. My gear is going to be slighted more like heavier stuff. So just saying, you can't strap it to your back. So like a Coleman camp stove is probably the most important. There's a few things that I swear that everyone needs to carry. One is a life straw. I think you should always have one of those in case you need it.
That's smart.
Always have water in the desert. Always have water. You see people walking into trails with no water, and it's insane. Because if you actually read the statistics of people who don't make it out of national parks, it would really make you carry water. Always have a headlamp. Good headlamp is irreplaceable, especially if it gets dark. And like there have been times where I've walked into places, and because I'm going to sunset, and it's very hard to see your way out, and you were at cliffs, and like having that headlamp has like probably literally saved my life a few times. It's the difference between like walking off the side of a cliff and not, right? um I think emergency blankets are definitely a thing you should always have. I've never had to use one. I assume they work. I just like to carry one.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, have you used one before?
I mean, not really. So back in the day, I was in the Boy Scouts, and I did my Wilderness Survival Merit Badge, and part of that was we had to go, survive overnight in the woods, and we could bring 5 items. And I think one of the items I brought was a survival blanket, but of course it was the middle of summer in like in New Mexico or something. So it was like 90 degrees
Yeah.
Fahrenheit at night. We did not need that. I think I laid on top of it. So I don't know, but I'm sure they do work.
Yeah, for sure. I have my doubts. They look like a piece of tinfoil,
Yeah,
but
right.
you never know.
But at least it gives you that mental comfort, right? You have it with you.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of them. To go back to the things, um, usually a first aid kit would be a
Sure,
great
right.
necessity to have. Just a little one. It doesn't need to be a specific kit, but it should have some basics in there for you in case you need it. And like granola bars, things like that. And your phone too. Satellite phone, I guess, if you need it. It depends where you are. Most of the parks now, they don't have service per se, but they have like internal service so you can call emergency services, which I think
Oh,
is a
okay.
really
That's good
neat
to
way
know.
to do it. Yeah, so you can still like if you're in Death Valley or something, you can still call 911 and they'll come help you, but you can't like call your friend and say how's it going type of thing. It's pretty neat because it can, it keeps that maintains the integrity of the park but still recognizes that like
Right.
if there's an emergency, someone needs to help.
And I think that just being overly prepared is probably a good idea, whatever you're doing, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's kind of funny too. Like I'm from a place that's pretty remote and
Hmm.
well not Toronto where I live now, right? But Manitoba.
Right.
And you kind of notice like there's also too I'd say in like the park areas and the wild areas of the US, there's almost a different mentality of just kind of helping each other out. And I think it is
Yeah.
because these places are so wild because if you are out on your own and you need help, like bad stuff can happen to you if you're not prepared. So I think
Yeah.
there's kind of a difference in that wilder mentality maybe. I don't know how to call it, but it definitely pays to be prepared out there. But there's definitely people that will help you out too. So
You're so right. I mean, I've had so many experiences where people will just come up to you and like, if you're having trouble with your tent stake, someone will come up to you and lend you a mallet, or you wake up the next morning and there's like a lady there who has made extra pancakes and is like, "Hey, do you want some extra pancakes? I made too many." And you just accept them because there's that kind of camaraderie that you get, I think, when you're out there in nature sometimes when you're camping.
yeah, I think so. Maybe it's just even to the distractions of everyday life are kind of gone a little bit too.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Well, what are some of the tips that you might recommend if somebody might want to get started with outdoor photography?
I'm gonna say the simplest thing is the first step is to start. A lot of times people get afraid and just start. Take pictures of everything. Take pictures of your family. Take pictures of trees in your neighborhood or street scenes. There's probably a million good photos right in front of you that you don't even realize are there. Like I'm looking out the window right now and there's a maple tree and there's probably 10,000 leaves on that tree and each one of them would probably make a good photograph. So there's so much there. Start with your phone if you need to. I recommend getting off the cell phone for photos. Some people use them and they have great luck with it. I don't prefer to shoot with the cell phone, but that's just me. You can get like one of those old film cameras, right? Like
Yeah.
we were just talking about it. You can get those for like probably $20. You can find a good film camera now. Go just start small. I'm sure you've seen it too. People just get so gear obsessed when it comes to photography and it comes to like it's almost like this like competition of who spent the most money on this lens or that lens. And to be honest, like you don't need that a lot of that stuff. It helps you. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, like the $4,000 lens I was talking about at the start, that's a great lens if you know how to use it, and it will help you take better photos for it, but you do not need that to start at all. Like you
Right.
can get
Okay.
that $60 lens and
And then what about tips for anyone that maybe wants to get outdoors? People that are not comfortable with nature but want to be more adventurous.
for sure. I guess I'd probably say the same thing. Like the number one thing is to start with everything, right? My wife and me have been talking about this recently, kind of like with trips and stuff. And I think for us, I know with like the pandemic and everything, we didn't
Mm,
get to travel as much and do all those things that we like to do. And I think too, like we discussed it too, like sometimes we get stuck because we want to plan this perfect trip. Like we
oh,
want
yeah.
this perfect thing to happen, right? And
Right.
I think we're all guilty of it to some extent. And the key is like, it's not to plan the perfect trip because that's not something that exists.
Right.
And I think kind of too, like, it's like that adversity in those trips are kind of what make them the best, right? So like, just start. I don't know. What are your experiences with it? Like, I feel like so much of my great trips, it's just been me just figuring it out and doing it on
Oh
my
yeah.
own.
No, I totally agree. I think sometimes the best adventures I've been on are the ones where things maybe even have gone wrong. Where something went completely off the rails, but it introduced some element of excitement, some element of adventure, whether that's weather or some hotel booking got canceled and I had to scramble for the last minute to find somewhere else to stay. I think you're totally onto something
Mhm.
here where over planning doesn't really necessarily benefit you all that much. Sometimes when things go wrong, you're actually going to end up having the better adventure, or sometimes when things are more unpredictable.
Yeah, that's great that you mentioned that. Yeah, because it's kind of like those memorable trips are the ones
Oh
where
yeah.
you have some trouble, right? Is it go back to like the U.S. national parks, and if you are in the Southwest, and just go get in your car and go see some of these places. I'm reminded of this one time I was staying. I think I was just staying in like a Motel 6 or something, right, in the Southwest, and I think I can't remember the name of the town. It escapes me, but I was about 2 hours from the Grand Canyon. The hotel clerk, I'm checking in, and they just kind of asked me like what I do because I got all these bags and stuff, and I just kind of mentioned, well, I'm a
Yeah.
photographer, and they're like, well, like, what are you photographing? I said, well, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, but I just came from the Grand Canyon, and he's like, I've never been there, and I'm like, I've traveled like probably 20 hours just to see this, and you're 2 hours away and you've never seen this. Like, I'm like, you need to go see this. Like, you've been to the Grand Canyon, right?
I have. Yeah, I have.
It's like one of the best places on the planet, is it not? Like, it's one
It's
of the,
mind blowing. Yeah.
yeah. So like, go see it. Just get out
Yeah.
there, you
I
know?
guess that's kind of like the thing where people who live in New York City never go to see the Statue of Liberty. When you're living somewhere, you sometimes think that adventure is somewhere far away, but it isn't. There's
No.
adventure literally, just down the road from where you live, and you overlook it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of those great things do kind of start at home too, because I think you can
Right.
see all those things and then migrate that as you move
Oh
out.
yeah, absolutely. And kind of like your example of looking out the window and taking pictures of the maple tree, adventure I think is really it's what we make it.
Yeah, and I think that too, that kind of goes to like that mindset of travel where it just kind of opens up your worldview.
Yeah.
To me, I think like maybe adventure is more of like a philosophy than even the act of doing it because I don't know, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's something about life when everything becomes mundane and boring and you forget to experience the things that are amazing that just kind of takes the spark out of it.
It's not that things necessarily are boring around you, it's that you've lost that perspective on it, right? And you have to rediscover that.
Hmm.
Well, what are your upcoming adventures then? So you've been to 48 national parks, which is way more than I can say. What are your upcoming plans? Do you have anything exciting planned in the near future that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, we have a bit. Like we're just opening past COVID here in Canada. Like we've had probably they say it's been the most locked down city in the world for 2 years. I don't know if that's true. I think China was worse to be honest, but
From what I've seen of Shanghai, it's not nice there.
yeah. Yeah, nobody was locking us in our houses or anything, so it was, yeah, not that bad in
Yeah.
perspective. But, yeah, we just did a trip to Ireland
Oh wow, cool.
3 weeks ago. So that was just a quick little 4-day trip. We were just like, "We're just gonna go and have some fun," and we did, and it was probably one of the best trips we've had because it was just 4 days and, like, again, not looking for the perfect trip. But, some more things, I still have to finish the East Coast parks. I have not done them, the US East Coast parks, so I need to do those. And then we're trying to figure out how to do South American one. I want to
Oh
try to figure
wow.
out, and I'm still in the planning stage. Yeah, trying to look at maybe flying into Colombia and then running that whole East Coast of South America right down to the tip,
Oh, cool.
and see some penguins.
Oh, I'd love to see that. That's so cool.
Yeah, me too. That's what's gonna take some planning.
Awesome. Well, Robert, where can people find you online?
So you can check out my website. That's probably the easiest place to find me. So it's robertlowdon.com, and I'll just spell it because my last name's sounds different than it's spelled. So it's ROBERTLOWDON.com. And you can also check me out on different social medias. Have an Instagram, Twitter, all those things. Just Robert Lowdon. You can always Google me too. I tend to pop up there.
Awesome. And we will definitely put links to all of that in the show notes, which you can find on attemptadventure.com as well. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a ton of fun talking to you today. I hope that our listeners are going to be inspired as well to go out and check out some national parks or take some photos or just get outside and start adventuring in any way that they can. And so thank you so much for sitting down to talk with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
All right, and we are back. It was a really fun episode. He was a great guy, a lot of fun to talk to. His favorite part of the U.S. is also maybe my favorite part, the Southwest, New Mexico. Like White Sands is one of my favorite national parks in the entire country.
Underrated. Highly underrated.
Definitely.
It's just so cool out there because you have mountains, you have a little bit of everything. It's great.
Yeah, and like we were talking about, that whole Southwest region is so alien. It's so otherworldly.
It is. But I will say, and I don't know if we've talked about this on this show, the U.S. National Park Service is one of the few parts of our government that I am extremely proud of.
I am so proud of it. You can say what you want, and U.S. has problems. I will not deny that. We have plenty of problems. The National Park Service is not one of them.
No.
That is one thing that makes me so proud to be an American. The exemplary U.S. National Park Department. It is phenomenal. They just do such a good job preserving the national treasures of the U.S.
Yeah. And you have all the way from national parks in the middle of the desert, like Joshua Tree. You have national parks in the Arctic, up in Alaska. You have national parks in swamp. You have national parks in the ocean, in tropical ocean. It's crazy.
I mean, the difference between Gates of the Arctic and dry tortugas are insane, but they're both in the U.S., and it really highlights the diversity of our country.
Yes, and I think we forget that.
Yeah.
We forget that, again, like dry tortugas is in the U.S. Gates of the Arctic is in the U.S. Denali is in the U.S. Where I am right now, I have Rocky Mountain National Park an hour away from me. I have Great Sand Dunes a few hours south. That one's weird because you can see snow-capped mountains and be in like ocean sand. It's weird. But anyway.
Now, I know that you were playing around with a camera a while back. Have you kept up with that at all?
Mm-hmm. A little bit. I've switched more back to my phone. I try real hard. I've gone back to more of my phone just because I always have it with me.
Right.
It's really easy to whip out and take a picture. And iPhones, especially the newer ones, have great cameras on them.
I have a recommendation, James, for you, and that is the app Camera Plus 2.
All right, I will download it right now.
If you're going to use your phone, use the app Camera Plus 2. It is it's a couple bucks to buy, but it is so good. I take all my pictures with Camera Plus 2.
It is $8, which is just fine.
I actually shoot film pretty frequently because film is very cheap in Thailand. It's very cheap to develop. A roll of black and white film costs, I think, around $3 US to develop. A roll of color is like $5, and they'll develop it and digitize it for you. So I do shoot a lot of film. I actually have a Canon EOS 2000, which was like the last great film camera that they made. And I mean, these things went for like $1,500 in like 1999, and you can buy them for like $15 nowadays. They take amazing pictures.
See, I really would like a film camera, but it's impossible to find film, and it's impossible to get it developed.
It's really popular here.
And there's something about a picture on film that's just different.
Grain looks better than noise, doesn't it? Like digital noise.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
Yes, it does. It's just like how you watch old videos from like those old video cameras, and they still look great. It's different, but it's true. Film grain looks way, way better than digital noise does.
Phantom Menace looks better than Attack of the Clones because it was shot on film, right?
Yes, it is true. And we will go to our grave thinking this.
James and I are in the small minority that are in total agreement that Phantom Menace is one of or it's the best of the prequels, and it is one of the best Star Wars movies, and I will stand by that.
Quick nerd tangent, why not? I will put it, let me think, fourth.
Okay, so let me guess,
Fourth.
James. I would say, if I know you, I would say that I don't know the exact order, but I would say that you're gonna put New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Rogue One above it. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct.
Yes. All right.
My order actually is number 1, Rogue One. It's my favorite Star Wars movie. I know this is a nerd tangent, but yeah, so Rogue One, Empire Strikes Back, New Hope, Phantom Menace.
It's such a good film. I think the reason I like it is because it honestly is kind of a standalone movie. You know? It's almost it's the prequel to the prequels, right?
And it had the best lightsaber battle of all time in Duel of the Fates.
Duel of the Fates.
And it had pod racing. Thank you for listening to our nerd tangent. Sorry about that. We get on those sometimes. Anyway.
Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're so glad we got to talk to you today. It was a lot of fun.
If any of our listeners out there, if you are a photographer and you feel like showing us some of your work, feel free. We'd love to see it. I love photography. My wife is an excellent photographer because it takes that like natural eye of seeing things, which I sometimes get, but most of the time it goes over my head because there are certain angles and certain ways to take pictures.
My wife is always very disappointed in me because I'm a very bad portrait photographer. She's learned to accept me for what I am. I'm a much better landscape photographer than I am a human photographer.
That's funny.
Well, James, in any case, it is time for our favorite segment, Adventures in the News. And this week, it is my turn. So this is not good news. I'm sorry to say, it's actually bad news. But it is about one of my favorite national parks, one that we've been to. You and I have been to like 3 times together, Carlsbad Caverns.
Mm-hmm.
Very sadly has had to close for the time being due to extreme fire danger. So, that part of New Mexico is very dry, but thanks to climate change and just the ongoing drought in the Southwest, apparently things have gotten really, really bad. So maybe not adventure news, but national park news. Carlsbad Caverns and some other national parks in that area have closed due to extreme fire danger. It says the main road to the caverns and the visitor center are still open, but essentially everything right now, according to the National Park Department, everything from Texas west, essentially I would say everything west of the Mississippi is in the red. It is really, really bad. So utilize caution, folks, when you are traveling in the western U.S. right now.
Yeah, and with the effects of climate change and this really just, I have no better word for it other than historic drought, it's awful. It is absolutely awful. We're feeling it here. Not as much. We've gotten a lot of late season snow and some rain, but we're still in a bad drought. California needs so much water. So much water. And so just be careful. Just anytime you're traveling in the western U.S., almost any time of year at this point, just be more cautious. If you are traveling from out of the country, I would avoid going to those places during fire season, which is typically the summer months. Really starting June through September, really, is fire season. Even if there's not a fire where you're going, the smoke will make it really bad. It becomes a lot less enjoyable, especially when you travel somewhere expecting to see these, beautiful vistas and everything else, and the smoke will be so thick you can't see anything.
Yeah, a lot of people want to travel to California and become really disappointed when they get there and they see that like the sky is just like red.
Yeah, California
and hazy
is
and kind of ugly.
No, especially during that time of year. California is one of the most. It's got some of the most beautiful places in the U.S. in California. It's beautiful, but unfortunately, it's very, very dry. They're running out of the little water they do have, and places up around Lake Tahoe, which I will say is probably very much one of the most beautiful places on this earth, is Lake Tahoe in that area.
You used to live there.
I lived like 30 minutes away from Lake Tahoe. It was beautiful. But again, during fire season, Reno didn't have fires, and that year Tahoe didn't have fires. But there was a mountain right outside my window. I could see a big mountain right outside my window, and the smoke would be so thick I couldn't see it. If the fire's too close, the sky turns red, and it's very, very eerie. It's really, really creepy.
I've never seen that, but yeah, it doesn't sound nice. You feel like you're in like Morrowind.
I was going to say Blade Runner, but yeah.
But even so, like even in Texas, whenever we have a burn ban, it's just not nearly as much fun if you can't have a campfire. If you're like Carlsbad right now is to an extreme that I've never seen. You know, even in Texas, where we have a burn ban, you can still use like a stove.
Mm-hmm.
Carlsbad has outlawed stoves at the moment because it's so dry and so dangerous there. So be careful. I guess my warning is check the national park websites just to make sure that there's no ongoing weather situations, because one of the main things, especially in the western U.S., is drought season and fire season, and it's not a joke.
You know, and we're talking millions and millions of acres.
Like, we're talking like a spark that drops off of a cigarette.
Mm-hmm. Early December here, we had it was the most destructive fire in Colorado history. And that was about 2 miles south of me. Nobody died. Nobody was severely injured, thankfully. But it destroyed millions and millions of dollars worth of homes. And you can drive through those neighborhoods and it's just husks. And it all started from a spark and wind. That's all it takes. They had to evacuate 3 cities. And I mean, it's just, yeah. So just be careful.
That's terrible.
Check the weather, check the news.
If there's any takeaway, just be careful. If you enjoyed today's show, please don't forget to subscribe. And before we finish up today, just one final reminder of your new monthly challenge, and that is to practice your travel writing. 100 or 1,000 words describing your hometown or where you live. You can find more Attempt Adventure content on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, where we are Attempt Adventure. Thanks as always for joining us and for listening today. We're always glad to hear from you. You can send listener mail to hello@attemptadventure.com. We read every single message we get. We would love to hear from you very soon. Right, Robert, well, thank you again so much for coming on the show. Just a reminder, folks, that you can see all of Robert's photography at robertlowdon.com. Check it out. And until next time,
keep adventuring.